James Gunn's DC Universe is officially in full swing with Superman, a comic book movie full of heart that in simple terms is a bold new take on the Man of Steel that pays tribute to the history of the character and kickstarts a new era for the DC Universe. Alongside that, Matt Reeves is gearing up to start production on The Batman Part 2, a sequel to his 2022 movie starring Robert Pattinson as the Caped Crusader. Pattinson's Batman, like Con Sweat's Superman, was also a bold new take on The Dark Knight, paying tribute to the character's history and helping to kickstart a new era for the DC brand as a whole. With that being said, there's been a lot of talk and interest from people as to whether we could see these variants cross over in a project for Gunn's new universe titled World's Finest, which would see the worlds of the Man of Steel and the Caped Crusader cross over as part of a team-up movie. In this video, I'm going to take a look at both the recent Superman movie and Reeves' Batman movie and analyse whether we could see them cross over. So starting off, we have 2025's Superman, directed and written by James Gunn, known for his work on Guardians of the Galaxy, The Suicide Squad and Peacemaker, which recently started airing its second season. Anyway, I went into this movie with a lot of high hopes, as I'm sure a lot of others did, what with this being the start of the new DC Universe and a whole new narrative of projects spanning film, TV, gaming and animation, according to Gunn himself. Now, this movie for me at least felt like a love letter to Superman, which I think was the case considering James was and still is a huge fan of the character. It's that kind of care and attention that I deeply admire. The movie features what I would argue is now the best modern take of Superman on film. It sees him being hopeful and optimistic, traits of the character rarely if ever expressed on film previously. Not only that, but this version of Clark has a great cast of supporting characters, both good and bad. We have the Daily Planet crew consisting of Jimmy Olsen, Perry White, Cat Grant, Steve Lombard, and of course Lois Lane, who is brought to life by the wonderful Rachel Brosnahan. Then there's the Justice Gang consisting of Mr. Terrific, Guy Gardner and Hawkgirl, and later on Metamorpho. Also, I think it's safe to say that James Gunn has begun the Green Lantern redemption on film because Nathan Fillion is absolutely hilarious in this movie, and I can't wait to see Hal and John show up next year in their show. Mr. Terrific for me was definitely a highlight, and seeing him brought to life in this movie is great, the character's first appearance in film. And lastly, I think it's quite great to see Isabella Merced getting the love she deserves for her acting, not only for this movie but also in The Last of Us, both of which are proving to be very well received by certain people. And finally, we have the villains of this movie, including Nicholas Holt's Lex Luthor, and he provides a new take on the character. He's cold, he's calculated, he's not completely over the top like Jesse Eisenberg's take on Lex was. If anything, I feel like this version of Lex is more in line with the comics, which I love. And then we have both the Engineer and Ultraman. Now, the Engineer was a fascinating villain, not just because of Maria Gabriela de Faria's performance, but also because of the unique nature of her powers. Whilst we do see Clark incapacitated for a time by kryptonite, the Engineer's powers are also used as a means of taking him out with the use of her nanotech powers, and Ultraman was also very good as well. And the use of Lex cloning him from Superman's DNA definitely makes me think that this sets the stage for more cloning tech to be explored later on in this universe, with the eventual introduction of Project Cadmus and also Superboy. And then there's the world that this film occupies. We're entering a world where superheroes and metahumans overall have existed for over 300 years. The best thing about this movie is we're not having to establish all that backstory in the movie on screen and pad out the runtime. We're thrown into the action straight away, and that's what hooked me on the movie overall. Next, we have 2022's The Batman, directed and written by Matt Reeves, best known for his work on the Planet of the Apes reboot trilogy, having served as a director for both Dawn and War, whilst also contributing to the latter's script as a co-writer. Now, for long-term viewers of the channel, you'll know that I have covered this movie over several videos in great detail, even going as far as to pitch my own ideas for a sequel. In fact, I did it twice. Now, this movie, in the same way as Superman, feels like a love letter to the character. We're introduced to a truly dark and gloomy version of Gotham City. We see that some of our major players are somewhat established. Batman, James Gordon, Alfred, Carmine Falcone, and the Penguin all exist in this world already, albeit in their early stages of the career. Now, Batman in this movie is also very different to those we have seen before. We're seeing Bruce in his earlier days as the character. Whilst we have seen Batman fighting crime in his early days, this is the first time we're seeing a younger Batman still learning to fight crime. His tech is more cobbled together than anything else. The Batcave is an abandoned subway tunnel, and he doesn't have access to Wayne Enterprises, at least not yet anyway. I suspect we'll get that in the second or third movie. Now, because this film is following a version of Bruce in his earlier years, we don't have a lot of the major players just yet. It's either that or those players are not fully established. In this movie, Oswald, or Oz, aka the Penguin, is not yet the crime boss we know him as. When we meet him at the start of the film, he's still a lieutenant to Falcone, and steps into that role over the course of his own spin-off series, moulding himself into a darker, Tony Soprano-esque version of Oz that we haven't seen in live action before. Whilst we have had Danny DeVito and Robin Lord Taylor playing the character in the past, in TV and film, we have never truly seen Oz in this light before, and I think it's very exciting. It's also worth noting that James Gordon is also not yet the commissioner of the GCPD, with that role currently being filled by Pete Savage, and with his death, that allows Gordon to eventually step into that role, maybe in part 2, which is similar to what Nolan's Batman trilogy did, having Gordon become the commissioner in the second film. Selina Kyle is also not the fully established cat burglar we know her as, and eventually we discover that she's the illegitimate daughter of Falcone, which brings him into the story. We also find out that the Wayne family actually had ties to the crime world of Gotham, something that we've previously seen before in the Telltale Batman games, which detailed a conspiracy between Falcone, Mayor Hill, and Thomas Wayne. And then we have the Riddler, brought to life masterfully by Paul Dano. Now, the Riddler we have seen previously in film, but since then the character has been seen in TV, gaming, and animation to a massive degree. But this version of the Riddler is very unique. He kills the corrupt members of Gotham's hierarchy such as Pete Savage, Don Mitchell Jr., Gil Colson, and even tries to kill Bella Royale, the new mayor of the city. In regards to Riddler actually killing the bad people in Gotham, I compare him in more of a modern sense to Dexter Morgan, whose code was only to kill other killers or bad people who had escaped justice. So now that we've discussed both of these takes on Bruce and Clark, the question that then needs to be asked is whether or not they would work well together. Now, I was always against the idea of the Reeves Batman films being part of the DCU, because Gunn's plans involved a completely new universe, and that would mean a new Batman. However, the use of a younger version of Clark in the recent movie has opened up more discussion on the topic. The opening text in the movie reveals that Clark has been active as Superman for around 3 years, and in the Batman it's established that Bruce has been around for about 2 years, and both heroes are still learning in their early days. There's also the argument that Pattinson's grounded Batman wouldn't fit in with the wider, more fantastical ideas that Gunn's been cooking up for the DCU. However, if that's the main complaint, let me direct you to Iron Man. Now, that movie was more grounded than anything else, and in the span of 10 years we saw gods, aliens, and all manner of fantastical ideas in that same universe. And in my opinion, the same could definitely be done for Pattinson's Batman. And then of course there's the argument that the tones of Batman and Superman are too drastically different for the two of them to appear in a movie together. And whilst Snyder basically gave Cavill's Superman that same tone, because my god he was dark, the idea of Batman and Superman having opposing tones is really meant to be the point. Whilst Bruce was on his way to stepping into the light by the end of his first movie, Clark can actually help continue those ideas. Perhaps the hope that Superman brought to the world inspires Bruce to perhaps add some colour to his costume, trading in the black and grey colours of his suit for something more approachable, perhaps adding some blue to the costume in place of the black, and maybe adding some white eyes to the cowl and ditching the gun emblem for something more refined could show that Bruce has embraced the idea of hope thanks to Clark. But that influence, however, can actually go both ways. Perhaps we could see a conversation where Bruce tells Clark about the emblem on his suit, that it was made from the gun that killed his parents, and Clark maybe decides to take that idea from Bruce and apply it to his own suit. Perhaps trading in his family crest emblem for something more classic and familiar, deciding to fully embrace his humanity and accept Earth as his home. He may have come from a distant alien planet, but it was Earth where he was raised. And that then brings us to Brave and the Bold, the upcoming DCU Batman movie. Now, let's say in a hypothetical scenario, Matt Reeves decides to allow his version of Batman and that world to be a part of this DC universe. What would this mean for Brave and the Bold? Well, here's my idea. If this were to happen, then I think Brave and the Bold would likely have to be the third part of Reeves' eventual trilogy, as part 2 has already been written by Reeves and Matt and Tomlin, and it is too far into early development for any larger scale changes to be made. So the third movie could focus on Bruce adopting a young Dick Grayson, and this would be, in my eyes at least, where he makes those changes to the suit. Adding the blue colours, changing out the gun emblem for an actual bat symbol, and the white eyes to the cowl. This provides a sense of hope to Gotham and that the world is changing. However, James Gunn is deciding to keep the Reeves Batman and that version of Gotham separate from the DCU, likely so he can craft a version of the Dark Knight more in line for the vision that he has for the new universe. And regardless of what happens with Pattinson's Batman or with the DCU Batman, I know I'll be holding out hope for the day that the Man of Steel and the Caped Crusader do eventually cross over. However, that's going to bring this video about the world's finest to a close. If you enjoyed this video and want to see me talk about some more DC stuff in future, then please let me know down in the comment section below. In the meantime, be sure to like this video and share it around, but also don't forget to subscribe. Thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you all very soon.